Hey, what's going on everyone? This is JoeYoursTruly back with another video, and today we're going to be doing the tier list for version 0.14. And before we jump straight into these, I want to give a little context and a little info on how we won the tier list on this channel. First off, this is just my opinion at the end of the day, so although I try to be as unbiased as I can be, do note that this is just my opinion at the end of the day, but I do try to take a lot of notes from what other players are saying, and also kind of like some of the stats we're seeing on like hero pick rates and win rates and all that really good stuff. Another big thing to note is that every tier list is different for every other person, and what I mean by that is when you look at stuff like League of Legends, they have tier lists made exclusively for different ranks. Like, so the tier list for gold can look very different for the tier list for like masters, right? And there's a large reason for that. It really comes down to something like the play skill level and how that translates to how well they can pilot that hero on average, which goes straight into how we're actually doing the ratings for this tier list. Of course, we have the S rank for top heroes, A for strong picks for the most of the time, B, C, and the one thing that's probably going to catch your eye is the D rank, which don't think that D rank is worse than C rank. It's actually going to be like a kind of placeholder kind of ranking for especially for some of the heroes that is a little bit more like has a lot of different like performances depending on how well the player is. That's why I call this the kind of one trick tier list. It's kind of like exaggeration, but it kind of stays really kind of sure what I mean by that is like the heroes you see right here in D rank are going to be the heroes that fluctuates the most depending on the player skill level, right? But generally outside that, I try to trying to find a nice balance between solo queue kind of mentality, or like how strong the heroes feel in the solo queue environment, but also how good some of these heroes were in the PCC this last weekend. That's kind of like one of the reasons why my tier list is kind of been delayed until today, because I want to see some of these heroes being prioritized and which ones are the best performers from this last competitive tournament. Of course, this competitive scene is not the majority of the player base, but they still have a lot of good notes you can take from that. I think you can apply to your solo queue game. So this tier list, you can kind of think of it as sort of a kind of like platinum, maybe diamond kind of tier list. Well, if you're someone that wants to be trying to climb to the higher ends of the elo, then this is kind of like that tier list for you. If you're someone that's starting like as a brand new player in the silver kind of elo, then of course this tier list won't be as applicable to you as you climb the silver and even gold elo. Any hero you can play can carry you through if you are good enough. So without further ado, let's kind of jump straight into things. We're gonna first talk about Kwang first, who is the hero that I've been most highly anticipated for. He's been my favorite OG hero back in Paragon, and his new kit and Predecessor is fantastic. So I'm gonna try my best to not be biased with how I place Kwang right here, but it's kind of interesting to see his initial release, where it's kind of like almost a Wraith situation, where I saw a lot of people thinking he's like really strong, but also see a lot of people think he's really weak. So especially I want to give this meta with Kwang a little bit more time before I kind of see where things will at with him. But I think with confidence I can say that he is an A tier pick. And a big part of it is due to the fact that his kit is just really good. Because like when you think of like Steel or Witcher, like what makes them so dang good is their crowd control and always having huge impact in team fights. And I see a similar situation happening with Kwang. Like he is a hero that has a lot of impact in team fights. The kind of difference though that sets apart from other tanks is that he brings more damage in his abilities. So he can have some really nice 1v1s capabilities, have some really nice capabilities to be able to try to go for the solo picks that the Seal Victor kind of lacks the damage department to do so usually, but also means that he's not nearly as durable. So the kind of tricky part of trying to figure out how to play Kwang was like, well, it has great crowd control, but if I'm not careful, I'm gonna get blown to smithereens. But after letting Kwang cook in the middle a little bit, it seems like people are starting to lean towards like tank items or tank builds, essentially going like Fire Blossom, Flex Matrix, World Breaker, even Overgrowth, right? And I think when you build Kwang more as a tank booster rather than as a pure booster with a lot of magical power, that's where it starts to feel like really good, being able to consistently stay alive in team fights, but also like having multiple ability rotations and be able to knock people up and CC crowd control people. So I think with that fact alone, that really sets him apart from like the Bs and Cs, being able to always have a lot of impact in team fights. Of course, I think he has some matchups that can kind of struggle a little bit in the off lane, and his jungle pick can be hit or miss due to the fact that his wave jungle kills can be pretty underwhelming compared to other picks. That's why I think he's a little bit better in the offlane compared to the jungle role, and so I don't think he's going to be S tier by no means. S tier is kind of reserved for the picks that are always going to be good and very hard to counter. I think Kwang is someone that can be countered like against the Zeus or Grux, but like outside of that, I think he's such a great hero. Maybe there's some skill level that needs to be considered with him, but at the same time, as soon as you land that 1 kill and get the knockup, that's just like kind of GG in that team fight. So I think he's a really solid A pick right here. So moving on to some more other notable picks that I've been kind of keeping an eye on. Wraith is going to be someone we're going to be talking about a lot, because ever since we saw those adjustments made to him, some people saw that and they're like, oh my god, this guy is just absolute broken, right? And I think he's really strong, right? The only thing is that in the PCC we saw Wraith really not that prioritized at all. So he's by no means broken in the sense that like he's still that kind of high risk kind of character, in the sense that if you miss your RB, miss your like ability setup, your damage can really fall flat. It doesn't do so like nearly as much compared to previous patches, but it still is there, right? So I'm gonna have to put Wraith in D. He's gonna be the prime example of what I mean by you better be one trick, because if you're a Wraith that can land all your snipes and all your kills, then yeah, he's gonna be so impressive. Put him S tier, right? But if you're someone that like misses half your snipes, he start to feel really bad. Start to feel like more like a B or C hero, right? And of course, like with this tier list, I'm taking consideration of players being able to have a good average performance with all these heroes. But for someone like Wraith, I think he's still that case of like he's kind of that hero you kind of just one trick if you want to get immense value from him. That's why I kind of created this D tier, because I feel like some of these other picks I'm going to be talking about later is that I think they're better fit when you think of them as a S to C range hero. They're like really good in the right hands, but then as soon as you get someone that's not as experienced on this character, they start to fall really fast, right? So I think he's just a prime example of what I mean by this S to C kind of range kind of character. Another notable pick I want to talk about is Greystone, and he's actually gonna go in the S tier. I think he's been like kind of hovering around the S or A tier for the last few tier lists, not just by me but also by other people. In this last PCC, we show why he deserved the S tier spot. He is just so oppressive in the jungle. Because imagine a Grux, right? Grux wants to kind of double kill you and just kind of just all attack you to death, right? But there's ways to counter that. You throw CC, you use your mobility options, space him out, and all of a sudden Grux can like kind of die pretty quick before he gets to kill you. Greystone doesn't have that issue. He can kind of W key you, walk you through, and normally you counter people going really aggressive with you by just blowing them up with burst damage or CC. However, you just can't do that to Greystone. That's what Greystone wants. Because as soon as you try to do all of that, he's just gonna press R, he's gonna get all of his HP back, and he's gonna just buy his team so much time, right? And so when you have a hero that not only excels in just weighing down like the backline, having all this damage in this kit, having good mobility, and still a hero that actually wants to throw everything at him and then he can get out of it, that's just nuts, right? That's just absolutely nuts, especially in the jungle role where normally you make or break objective fights based on junglers alive. Well, good luck trying to like take Greystone on the picture. If anything, he's the last one standing a lot of times in his team fights. So if you have someone that like just can know that and just doesn't like, what's the word, if they can get aggressive with him without like just going all out on him, just don't be afraid to get aggressive, because he's that hero you can get super aggressive with and not get punished with nearly as easily compared to these other heroes. So with that fact alone, he's just amazing in the jungle, and of course also really solid in the offlane as well. He has a great early game, and of course his mid to late game is super good as well, because he just becomes so hard to kill, right? I think he has some matchups where he can sort of struggle, but again, like he just presses R and then all of a sudden like he just can't get bullied out of lane that easily, right? So I think he seriously deserves the S tier spot. He's really easy to pick up and play. So I think if you seriously considering a hero to have in your roster to be able to kind of climb a bit both and have great flexibility in both offlane and jungle, I think Greystone is the premier choice for them. One last shout I want to give on this patch before I start to go alphabet order is gonna be the Rampage, because Rampage also received some notable changes as well. I think some people are still sleeping on this pick a bit. I think probably to the fact that a lot more eyes is on the Kwang and Wraith for the most part, but also I think a lot of what Rampage wants to do, Greystone does that, and sometimes does it even better than him. So let's kind of put him in and explain a little bit more. Because Rampage is the same kind of hero as Greystone in the sense that they're both very durable, and they're both targets you want to like prioritize and kill, but they're the kind of heroes that like Predecessors are, and they want the enemy teams to focus them. The biggest difference though is that Rampage can be busted down if he uses ultimate too late, or if the enemy team has the damage capabilities to actually shred through the Rampage defenses. You can't do that with Greystone because obviously he presses R, he goes stasis, and he's immune to damage, right? So I think a lot of what Rampage is like really good at the moment, Greystone just kind of does that just better, or does it in the way that it's just making it more unplayable for enemy team to deal with. But I'm still putting them in A because I actually think that the changes they did to Rampage is actually really solid. Because now you can double Q, wall, and behemoth, and that's a huge deal. Being able to insta cast a stun on Rampage is so nuts in teamfights. Being able to lock down that one person, like you just Q insta from using your behemoths at the start of the team fight, and then you keep chasing down that one person and you get to kill them again instant, and that is just nuts. That's a lot of CC you can pull out during his ultimate alone. But also the damage adjustments he has received is also feels pretty dang nice. I really like him. I know some people like the Victor or the Silver jungle, but I think Rampage, out of all the tank junglers besides Greystone, is a very consistent jungler, I would say. He's someone that can be really hard to shut down in the mid to late game, and he's very good at contesting the directors, just going in and being super beefy, super hard to like punch and burst down. So I seriously think that he's kind of like the premium jungle tank choice besides Greystone if you want to play someone that can be really hard to kill but also having a lot of impact in team fights. So that's about it for all the 4 noble picks I want to talk about. Now let's kind of speed run these rest of the picks out. Counters had to change more, still matchup depending on situational. Like a lot of matchups in the mid lane can be pretty tough to count, but more importantly, she's really easy to camp because she has very low mobility and she's very weak early on. That's why she's normally best playing the jungle, and her jungle role is actually pretty dang good. But I think even the jungle role, she can get countered pretty easy by stuff like a Crunch or Chimera that can kind of run her down. But also she's a hero that relies on snowballing to become a huge threat, and that's why I think she's more like a situational pick in the sense that like if you run against a team with a lot of CC or a lot of people that can run you down, then Count is probably a bad choice. But in other kind of Canadian comps, I think she's starting to perform much better. Next up is Crunch, and I'm actually gonna put him in B. You can argue to put him A, right? But I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the other booster picks and why I think they deserve to be A. But the thing about Crunch I've been noticing is that, of course, he has the really strong early game, especially once he hits 6. However, as soon as he gets to mid to late game, it always seems like he falls off a cliff. And part of the reason is because he wants to take the 1v1s, right? However, a lot of times he gets into 1v2s with the offlane in the jungle, or he tries to work with the Feint to old prime fight, and then he's trying to go in and just gets obliterated, right? And it's just like Crunch is that hero that hates CC, silences, all that kind of stuff, right? Every time he gets CC silenced, that's a huge like performance drop on his damage, but also his survivability takes a hit because if he's not hitting people, he's not getting that passive heal from his ultimate, right? And also I think he's a hero that requires someone to know the matchups and know the hero limits pretty dang good, because if you're playing Crunch passive in offlane, then you're playing him very wrong. You have to snowball in offlane. That's the only way to play him. If you go even, then most of the time you are losing that matchup in my opinion. So I think he's the average performer. I think in the right hands he can be like a very strong showing pick, but we were talking about like the more average kind of Joe you kind of see in plat, diamond-ish. So I think for the most part Crunch is just average. He's good, but he has some really bad matchups and he requires a lot of player knowledge to be able to use this pick to its absolute best. Next up, it's gonna be Deku. I think she's still a solid A. You can never go wrong with the Deku. Of course, I see some really good Dekus and I see some really bad Dekus. So she's a kind of pick that's not gonna carry you necessarily, but she's still overall like just really solid support. Just having that range capabilities, having great crowd control throughout her entire kit. I think you can never go wrong with the Deku, but I don't think she's necessarily S tier, like in the sense that she can just hard carry just by picking her. Like you have to be able to know how to play her really well to bring out the best of her. Next up is Jungle. He's gonna be a pick. I think he's a really solid ADC. His style is always what makes him one of the stronger ADCs. Just the fact that it can shut down a lot picks like the Crunch, for example. Like trying to like fight a Jungle is just miserable experience for the Crunch. But I don't think he's necessarily an S tier pick just because the one of the ADCs we're going to talk about later, I feel like he just outclasses every other ADC in the game at the moment. Next up is Mouth. I think he's also an average performer. He's actually a hero that me for personally in offlane. If I'm getting super sweaty in the game and I just want to win the game in offlane, then I pick Mouth because he just has some really aggressive early laning phase, and of course when you get to mid to late game, he just like destroys any squishy targets, and I can kind of hard carry him by either split pushing or just like keep diving the backline and instantly deleting any enemy foes. But of course he's kind of like the same thing with Crunch, where it's like you only really get the huge benefits from Mouth if you know how to play that hero to its best limit, and most people don't really have that same aggressiveness, have the same knowledge on the Mouth, I would say. And of course I think he's actually someone that can get punished quite easily if you're not careful. Like, so I think he's someone that is very strong, but for other people maybe more average performer. And also I think in the jungle role, it seems like the more bruisers and tanks to be more dominant in the jungle role in my opinion, besides like 1 or 2 like other boosters. So I think Mouth as an assassin in the jungle, it seems like assassin doesn't tend to be performing nearly as well compared to other roles in the jungle. Next up gonna be Gadget, just a solid all around just mid laner. You can't go wrong with her, but she's definitely someone that kind of lacks some oomph to her abilities from time to time, but she's definitely a safe laner, having that long range kind of kit and being really good at contesting objectives with her Tesla Dome. So I don't think she's a bad pick, but I think there's some other mid lanes that are better to pick up if you can master them more. And one of them is Gideon, which he's just annoying. Imagine trying to punish a Gideon mid lane. Right, it's just so hard to punish him in mid lane because he has so much mobility with just E alone, and then with the mid lane just being so short, it's just, unless the Gideon is pushing wide at your tower, there's no way you can actually lock this guy down. So I think he's that perfect mid laner for playing safe, but also for playing super aggressive. You can play super aggressive for Gideon and not worry about ganks because you just press E, go back to your tower, you're safe and sound. But of course, he's also really great in team fights with his ultimate as well. So I think he's still that premium mid lane choice if you want to play someone that can be safe, can be super aggressive, and having a lot of impact in team fights as well. Next up is going to be Grux, and this one is a little bit harder for me to actually rate because he's someone that fluctuates a lot depending on the elo you're in. If you're starting off for the first time in Predecessor, then Grux is probably like an SS kind of tier hero. It's just really hard to deal with. But as soon as you get to like Master tier where I'm at, you start to feel like a matchup dependent situation in here because he's that hero that if you play into him how he wants to, then he's a super perfect hero. But of course, with his very low range kit and being really weak to a lot of CC, he's someone that can easily like hide out and control on team fights, and that's why and like mastering elo, he's kind of like a C kind of rank hero for me. But of course, I'm trying to consider like how people feel about him generally in like the gold or plat elo, and I think even in the plat low diamond like kind of tiering, I think he's like an A pick. I think he's a strong pick most of the time because I think until you actually hit like high diamond and master tier, I don't think people know how to actually deal with the Grux for the most part. And I think he does have some really good matchups too. Like another reason why I'm putting them A's because of the new offlaner Kwang that a lot of people seem to really like, and Grux is actually a very good pick to it because I think Grux is best used in counter matchups, like against a Severok, against a Kwang, like against those kind of heroes, like Gwar can really just excel. Of course, you have to be wary that like with the low mobility, he still can be easily camp a lot, and that's what kind of happened in the last PCC this last weekend, where we had seen the Gwars being picked up, right, and some of the best players like Tekken Kids playing Gwars off lane, but he just did not have a good time in his games because it's just so easy to punch the Gwars. As soon as you get a good aiming team that can deal with that pick. That's why I was almost leaning towards B, but at the same time, I think compared to like the Crunch and Fame Mount, I think Gwars is much more easier, more straightforward to play, and I think for the most part, I think people have a hard time shutting down the Gwars versus like a Crunch and Fame Mount. So I think with those kind of facts alone, I think he's a solid A tier pick. Just know that if you start to really kind of get high in the elos, and if you start to get really hard to play the Gwars, that's kind of like the player diff coming in, where players know how to play against the Gwars, maybe need to start picking up another hero at that point. Next up is going to be Howitzer, and I'm actually going to be putting him to B2. I still think he's much like the Gadget, where they're both solid mid laners, but compared to like other mid laners like the Gideon, they seem to lack that really extra punch to them that really pushes them really high up and kind of like power level, in my opinion. I think he's really solid. He's like someone that can win the 1v1 super good. I think he's like a mage that excels in 1v1s, which it's really good, but at the same time in team fights, what you want in the mid lane is someone that can actually have a lot of AoE high ability damage, and Howitzer doesn't offer that as much. Training that with high single target damage and long range like picking potential with his E, mine, and safety net with his ultimate, right? So I think he's solid. You can never go wrong with him, but I don't think he's someone that's like a super strong pick most of the time. Next up is going to be Kalari. She's actually going to be another hero I consider to be, you better be one trick on this hero, because it's very interesting. She's like someone that fluctuates so much. Like in low elos, if the person is decent on Kalari and people are not warding as much in low elos, I think she's super impressive. She started to go to like the more gold elo, then she started to feel pretty like meh, but then if you get to master tier and you get someone that's actually a one trick on her, she's so like annoying to deal with, right? And we kind of see that in the PCC too, where like some people will actually just ban out the Kalari because they're afraid of that one trick playing her in that tournament. So I think Kalari is just that hero that really depends on the player. If you're someone that really enjoys the assassin styles hero that is a Kalari and put a ton of time with her, then yeah, she's gonna feel super strong. But if you're someone that kind of like doesn't play her that much, then she's gonna feel more like a matchup dependent, feeling kind of underwhelming, right? She's someone that is very unforgiving, but if someone can master her like playstyle, then she's super impressive for enemies to deal with. Next up is going to be Camille. I think he's an S tier hero. She's just like one of the easiest junglers to play. We even see the stats that was put on the Twitter page where like Camille is just one of the most popular heroes being picked up by new players, and for good reason. Very straightforward hero character, even more so than Greystone, I would say. And of course, he's very strong early game pressure, and also being good in the mid to late game, because I think he kind of falls off in the late game. But if you're building the booster kind of playstyle that is correct on him, in my opinion, he's someone that can be still really kind of hard to kill in those team fights, because his cleanse can be so clutch. Because a lot of people try to like stop hyper aggressive divers by throwing CC at them, but Camille gets a free cleanse and can shake that off. So I think even at the high end of the elo, Camille is just really strong. He's just always been like a solid just jungler. Like if you want someone that can be super healthy and in the jungle, having really high pressure early game kind of games, but also soloing objectives is his bread and butter, I think Camille is that pick for you. Next up is going to be Kira. I think she's going to be average performer. Like she's someone that actually has some insane burst capabilities. Like she's someone that has a lot of damage behind her kill. However, what really like pulls her down is her wave clear is just so dang awful. Because all these other ADCs like Drongo and Murdoch and Trimlock, they use one ability, they clear the wave, they can just immediately rotate to a team fight or objective. But Kira is like, can't do that at all. The only way you can help solve her wave clear problems is by going Stormbreaker, but that item is very meh on her. If anything, it really hurts her actual damage capability. You want to go the Famisher and put her Demolisher to make her just shred like anyone and just kind of just one shot with like Q and on B, that kind of stuff. But if you do that, then you have no attack speed, and you don't have a kit that can actually wave clear that all. So I think in solo queue environments, it's just so hard to be able to like play her a lot of times, because it's really hard for you to farm efficiently and rotate to the big important team fights that your team needs you at. And another reason why in the last PCC tournament we haven't really seen her play, because it's just really hard to coordinate a keyword rotation when she's stuck clearing the wave like for a minute and a half, right? Next up is gonna be Belica. I think she is a solid A. You can argue she's an S tier hero right here, but I think she's A only because I think she's someone that can actually be. She had a similar situation as Grux, where like if someone wants to make your life miserable, they can do that, and there's nothing much you can do about it. Like she has a lot of just pressure in the mid lane, but she does it in a way that is not as like easily accomplished compared to other mid lanes, because not only you have to be wary about the ganks and low mobility you have as a Belica, also it's just like trying to land your knockup and on-B combo on repeat is very key to playing her. So if you're using your Q knockup to like trade with your opponent, yeah, you can get trades off, but in that time you don't have your Q, you're so vulnerable to ganks. And when you're like having to constantly worry about, should I throw my Q out for the trade or should I hold it for potential gank, when you're having to constantly deal with that, it can be sometimes hard to pressure your opponent safely, right? And that's the key word, safely. Like Gideon can pressure his opponents very safely and very consistently, whereas Belica doesn't do that as safely and as consistently. I feel like in the mid lane she can be more shut down by junglers or even off lane that decide to look at her a lot. And even the support world, like she's decent in that, but I think there's other supports that just perform better than her most of the time. So I think she's a really solid A. I think you can argue for S tier, like her burst damage is just insane, but at the same time, I think she has some skill cap to her, just being a more vulnerable hero, but also just being a hero that's more easy to punish, in my opinion. Next up is gonna be Mortgage. I think she's a matchup depends situation hero. I think she shreds like low elo player. She's like a pump stomper in a sense, but unlike the Carmelo where like he doesn't fall off, in my opinion, as you get to higher elos, I think Mortgage falls off pretty heavily when you get to higher elos. And especially since we have Iki Scorch as another DOT mage, I think Mortgage is just a hero that really just pales in comparison and just falls off as you climb the higher elos. You can't go wrong with her, right? It's just like, I feel like if you're going to get a heavy CC comp, don't pick her. If you're going to get a high mobility team comp, don't pick her. It's just you have to be careful about blind picking Mortgage into an enemy team comp. You do not know who you are facing. Next up is gonna be the Murdoch, and I think he's actually gonna be a pick hero. He's kind of like that sleeper pick that we saw in the PCC tournament play with great success. I don't know if I want to put him S tier though. Like I think there's that one ADC that we are gonna eventually get to, that I seriously think he's like the best ADC at the moment. And I think in solo queue environments, I think that ADC is just easier to execute, whereas Murdoch requires a lot more player skill for boxing, using good minds to be able to trap opponents and play around your minds, especially against melee opponents, and also just your global snipe, which if you know how to use your global snipe right, in the sense that you can actually land it, but also use that to pressure any enemies on the map, I think that's when stuff to feel really good. So he's not like an ADC that's as straightforward. He doesn't have that super awesome ultimate for team fighting that these other ADCs do. So I think he's a really solid A pick, just not quite the S tier pick in my head. Next up is Mario, and she's actually another you better be one trick. She's like, she has a simple easy kit on paper, but high skill expression, because her global ultimate is just a part of that. Like if you don't use your global ultimate pressure well, then you're losing the entire reason why you pick this hero. You pick Mario to have insane global ultimates, so if you can't even do that part right, then she really falls off super hard in my opinion. There's not only that, but also like her only laning phase is something that can be such a huge mixed bag depending on the player on it. Like I've seen some really aggressive, really good Mario players that know how to play the Mario in the early game, but I see some really bad Mario players that just play her as a shield bot and don't interact with the Amy duo, right? So I think she's a hero that, much like the Kawaii and Wraith, that her performance really fluctuates depending on how good that player is on the move, because I think she's an insane like support hero, and that's why in EU like she's fired a lot more, because I think there's way more better melee players in EU compared to NAEs, right? So I think if you're someone that like plays melee a lot, very comfortable with her, I think she's of course super strong. Don't sleep on her, but definitely don't pick her just because you think she's easy. No, she's not that easy at first glance. You definitely want to be like a very like good player to be able to use melee to the best capabilities. Next up is gonna be Narbash, and he's that hero that I'm gonna put in S. Unlike the Mirio where like she's the one that has a high skill ceiling, Narbash doesn't have that high skill ceiling. Most of the time you press E and all of a sudden you're just healing your entire team, and let me tell you, his healing is just so impressive in the mid to late game. We saw in the PCC tournament where there were so many mid to late game team fights was being won solely because of Narbash, where both teams battle out, everyone gets super low, and then you have a Narbash just presses E, heals the entire team up, and all of a sudden they can just whip the old prime while the enemy team has to reset because they're just too unhealthy to contest. And that's the power of Narbash. Like, he just presses E in those mid to late game team fights. He can provide so much healing and so much objective control, because if your team is very healthy all the time, you can have so much ease to be able to like whip the primary blaze and going for like the old prime, right? Because his early lane phase can be kind of tricky from time to time, but I think for the most part, his mid to late game is just too dang good. His kit is just very straightforward. He has a good amount of CC and good utility in his kit. So even in like the low elos, I think no one will have a hard time playing him. And in the high elos, when people are knowing how to play the early lane phase of Narbash, I think he's just seriously oppressive in the right hands. Next up, it's gonna be the phase, and I think she's gonna be a C pick. I was almost considering to put her in a baby or one shape, but most of the time, the most value you get from phase is just the link where you be able to pull ACs back to safety. She's that one support you can actually play super far behind your ADC, and that's the correct way to play her. Most of the time when playing support, you want to play next to them, so if they jump on your AC, you can immediately respawn back. Phase though is she doesn't care if people jump on the ADC. She stands back and then just yoink them back to safety, and that's all you really need to do a lot of the times. I think she's though matchup dependent situation, just because I think if you have a pretty bad ADC, then the phase picks up the field kind of meh. She kind of lacks that hard CC, so if you have a team comp that lacks CC like a Steel or Winter provides, then I think playing the phase can be quite tricky, because then you're laying like a Collide or Crunch going onto your ADC for free without much CC to stop them, right? So I think when you want to pick phase is when you have enough CC around your other roles, and so that's when I think is the best time to pick her up. Next up, it's gonna be the Revenant, and I think he's gonna be a B tier pick right here. And the main reason for this is because I seriously think that I think he still has the absurd late game damage, being able to one-shot ADCs by full shotting them in Netherrealm, that kind of stuff. However, I think he has a lot higher risk to that playstyle. Unlike the like the Trimblast, where they're very safe in lane and can self-peel for themselves in team fights, Revenant doesn't want to do that nearly as good. Like, the only self-peel he has for himself is his ultimate, but if you're taking the ultimate just to self-peel for yourself and pick a bad target, that's when he starts to feel very kind of meh, right? He's like a hero that you have to snowball for him to feel really good. As soon as you fall behind, he starts to feel a terrible ADC to play, right? If you can't even 1v1 anyone in your Netherrealm as Revenant, then you might as well just play any other ADC at that point, because you just cannot do what you want to do if you don't get ahead. Next up is going to be the Witcher, and I think he's going to be S tier pick right here. Excuse me. And I've been putting Witcher as an A pick for the longest time, just because I think he's someone that is very hit or miss, literally, depending on if the player can land the hooks. I don't think he's like you better be one trick, because I don't think you have to really massive skills to have a lot of impact on him, because he's someone that be played and the support, jungle, and offlane super well. And I think if you land that one hook 1 out of 5 times, that's still like so good in like the dual lane, because all one hook is all you need to do to win just straight instantly, right? And we saw in the last BCC, he's just always pick or ban. Like, this is a guy that like is just so oppressive because of his hooks, because of his durability, because of all of his like crowd control. Like, you don't have to be a god to Wraith to be able to press R and just ruin someone's day that's someone trying to dive on your backline, right? Because you don't always have to lead your hooks, and you can just open up with your ultimate after using Whip Walkers, get the guaranteed stun lockdown, and then you can throw your hook right after, which is the guaranteed combo, because you have enough time to throw your hook after the game stun by the Victor ultimate. So I seriously think that like in the especially start the climb, this is like a person that starting to get comfortable with the game, that can start to play most heroes in the game. I think that's a hero that's not gonna be that hard for that kind of player to pick up, and I think he's just super impressive for what he can do. Next up is going to be Sirius. I think she's an average performer. She's someone that can be pretty snowbally. She's someone that has some really strong capabilities in the jungle, but I think she's someone like the Crunch and Fame Mouth that can be easily punished if she is not careful. Especially if she gets behind, she starts to feel pretty terrible in the jungle. Her jungle could start to feel pretty meh, and it can be really easy to bully it behind Sirius. And I know sometimes Sirius is being picked off lane, but I think she's kind of like an off meta pick. I think we should mostly focus her on the jungle, and I think her jungle is fine if she has the right matchups, but I think most of the time it's like if she doesn't get ahead like the Revenant does, they both start to feel pretty bad. Next up it's gonna be Sevak. I think it's actually another hero that I consider to be you better be a one trick, because especially after the nerfs they did to him a while back, he's someone that really tests your ability to be able to farm his stacks at a efficient way. Because if you're hitting max stacks only after 35 minutes into the game, then this is probably not the hero for you. The ideal goal to hit Sevak max stack is around that 20-25 minute mark. That's when you start to feel super impressive if you can max forward pass before the 25-minute mark, which is definitely doable, as I showed a couple of times in my last few Sevak videos. And that's when the one trick kind of things start to come in right here. I think he's a hero that like if you can master him really well, know how to farm him despite having the bad matches in the offlane, he starts to feel super good. But if you don't know how to farm his stacks well, then he starts to feel like very meh, and you might as well play another tank at that point. Next up is going to be Shinbi, and I think she's going to be a C kind of pick right here. She's really strong, but I also think she's also very situational. You pick her offlane if you want to split push, but sometimes you need to pick a hero that can actually rotate the team fights, which she could be fine in those team fights, but I think she's best played as a split pusher. But even then in split pushing role, you gotta make sure you have the right matchup. Like if you're going to get the Sirius or Fame out, like a super hyper aggressive laner, it can be really hard to farm and kind of scale to what you want to do as well. So I think she's not a bad hero at all, but I think she's also situational both for your team comp, but also who you're facing in the off lane. I don't have to explain much. Steel is just still very impressive. Like, doesn't matter if he's behind or not, he's just so impressive in team fights. He has a great early lane phase in the off lane, can be really good flex in the jungle, and also very solid in the support as well. Like it's at this point it's just so dang obvious why Steel's always been a top tier hero. It's just he's the premier tank with a lot of CC that is just unplayable for enemies to play into. Next up is Faye. I think she's a matchup dependent hero. Like she's like kind of like the Bellica will. If someone wants to kind of ruin your day, they can do that to you. Unlike the Bellica, that I think she has situations where she can at least get out of these sticky situations with all the ganks. I think Faye has very limited options. Every time she gets ganked, the only way she gets out is she uses her ultimate. And when you don't have your ultimate, you don't have that damage capability to really 1v1 like an opponent, or you don't have that ultimate for the big team fights. So I think Faye, and it's such a great like hero for those team fights. But even if you get past the really rough laning phase, like people just use their cleanse and then they completely counter your ultimate, and when they completely counter your ultimate, then it's just your value just really falls off super hard. So I think she's a great hero. It's just like she can either just be shut down by either getting cleanse or just by the enemy team comps she is facing. Next up is going to be Twin Blast, and I'm actually going to be putting them S tier right here. This is the hero that I consider to be the premier ADC choice right here. Great mobility, long range abilities, instant wave clear power, great power throughout the whole game. Like if you want a player ADC, well, it's like even if you have the worst support in the world, this is the ADC that can still feel pretty dang fine in the 1v2s, right? And like I think both him and MODOK are very similar in that sense, but I think Trumblast is a lot more straightforward, being able to kite people out, having more straightforward mobility, right? I think if you're bad at boxing, then I think MODOK starts to be not as good for survivability. But for Trumblast, most of the time you're playing for the long range, you have your dash, it's much more straightforward to be safe with him. Having that long range kind of kit, but also just excellent just heal all around. Like he's just someone that I think until other ADCs can like get buff or Trumblast get nerf, I think he's always going to be the premium ADC choice. Next up is going to be Ceres. I think he's going to be a pick right here. He's super impressive in the laning phase, and of course he's also going to be really good in the team fights because his ultimate cage can really set up some really insane plays. And I think we got to the point where people know how to play the Ceres early game fine. And if you want to blind pick a hero that can be super aggressive as well, I think Ceres is that best kind of pick for that. You gotta be a little bit careful, have some matchups you can sort of struggle in, and at the very least, if you do fall behind, he's gonna still be fine as an ultimate bot, being able to lock down people and let your teammates be able to follow up and kind of clean up, in my opinion. Next up is gonna be Spell, and she is gonna be a C pick right here. She's very matchup dependent situational against heavy CC comps, a lot of mobility, which is like 9% of the team comps in Predecessor. Spell does feel like she's playing hard mode in Predecessor, but if you somehow get the team comp, well, you don't have to face that like aggressive mobility or like CC comp. You have a good support like a phase that can actually peel for you really well. I think that's where Spell like has really great capabilities. Like I think she's so semi-slip on, like she has some of the highest damage capabilities as an ADC in the game, but she's also the most vulnerable and easiest to punish as an ADC, and that's why I think she's a C pick right here. Last pick right here is going to be the Iggy Scorch, and I think he's a B kind of pick right here. I don't think he's necessarily like bad at all. Like I really want to kind of put him A, but it seems like people are hit or miss still with Iggy and Scorch. I think he's not bad if you want to keep spamming him play every game, but I think the biggest strength that Iggy provides is that objective damage. But on the flip side, like his gank potential, his like direct damage is not like as good as the Bellica or the Gideon, and that seems to be the more value characteristic of a mage. Having that straightforward burst damage kit, having that great gank potential seems to be something to be better for the mid laner roster, whereas Iggy is someone that relies more on his team to play around his turns, because if his team plays too fast, too aggressive, then Iggy won't be able to follow up as nicely with his damage. His best play when people can play around the objective, let him set up the turrets, or play slow, let people walk into his turrets, let him do the damage and win out that way. And that's gonna be my tier list for today. And I keep going over the 40-minute mark. I really want to try and get to the point where I can get these solid tier list videos out within 30 minutes or less, but I do think you guys enjoyed the longer kind of form of tier list kind of videos, but at the same time I'm going to try to be a little bit more concise whenever I can. So moving forward, I might try and slowly but surely get more and more concise, because at this point I'm repeating a lot of the same information that I do in my previous tier list videos, but I just gotta figure out that a little bit more. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Of course, it's just my opinion at the end of the day, so feel free to disagree with me down in the comments down below. But if you want to keep seeing this video, definitely let me know. I think it's still a very good educational kind of opinionated guide. If someone's struggling to figure out who's the best heroes in the meta, then I think it's a good general idea for that. But if not already, subscribe to JoeYoursTruly so you don't miss a single beat by me. But other than that, really appreciate the support as always. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.